Moksho Doje Shangi Compound Show. Let's do the full limitless contemplation. May all beings have happiness and create the causes of happiness. May they all be free from suffering and creating the causes of suffering. May they find that noble happiness which can never be tainted by suffering. May they attain universal impartial compassion, free of worldly bias towards friends and enemies. Sem jendamje dewatang dewe jutang den ba jujig. Dungal tang, dungal chichu tang tra waju chik, dungal mepe dewa tampa tang mindra waju chik, nering chak tang mi tang tra we tang nung chempo la ne pa ju chik. So good evening, everybody. I'm sure the ones, Kathy, you got Yash. I know it's very early for you, but another week or two and it'll be fine. That's why all the UKs come in late, you know, I know that it's hard. So tonight, we're going to do the last session of the Shambhala wisdom. And butt in if you want to say something, please do, because nice to see you, Lindy. I haven't seen you for a long time. Put your camera on if you can. We're going to do the Shambhala wisdom of the Great Eastern Sun, the practical house for enlightened living. So we're going to complete it tonight because it's important. We've done a lot of it, and I think otherwise it might get quite mundane or whatever. So we're just going to finish tonight. But it seems very important tonight to begin to realize that we are all spiritual warriors. That's what Chogyam calls us, spiritual warriors, not aggressive ones, I hope, just spiritual ones. And that if we choose to, we can live in a state of enlightenment, okay? When I get a bit depressed about the state of the world, I know that if more people woke up to their basic goodness, their primordial state, then the underlying view of the whole world would become like the Shambhala kingdom. Because where is this kingdom? This kingdom, you can go and look in the Himalayas for a lot of time, but you'll never find it unless your mind has actually gone to understand it in many, many ways, because it's in the mind. So difficult for us to actually understand what Pure Lands are, because I always thought when I first learned about Pure Lands, you know, that you go there after death, but you don't. You go there after death, into your real Vajra body, into the Vajra mind where the Pure Lands exist. So it's a plane, it's a dimension. And when you know that, then it doesn't matter where you're living, because wherever you're living, you've got to train your mind to be able to go to that purity. So when the Buddha said, my land is pure, because you can't see it, it doesn't mean it's not pure, is a really, really, really important point. Like, and you can talk to me about how do you get there in your mind? Because how many dimensions has your mind actually got? I mean, it's got many, many dimensions. Now, when we understand that, we begin to tune into our enlightened consciousness and leave the illusion of our temporary identities behind. It's really, really important to understand this, because these temporary identities, gone. The minute you die, they're gone. They're absolutely gone. Kerry, I'm glad you're here. She doesn't have to put her camera on. We've agreed tonight, okay? But the rest of you can. Freya, it's time for you to put your camera on, okay? We've got to leave these temporary identities behind. It's really important. And only when you do can you actually go to that spiritual plane in your mind. You know, Trungpa's wife, who wrote in the book, and she lived in his Shambhala world, and she said, it's like a bodhisattva approach to in a Shambhala world. So you're using your same things because they lived in a Shambhala kingdom in their household, and they had the names of the Shambhala kingdom. But of course, they lived with Buddhism, and that's what he taught. But he said, knowing the Shambhala in your mind is really important. And Buddhism goes with the Shambhala kingdom, where we have a different view about everything. Because suddenly it's not my achievement, my needs, how I look, but it's about our being able to tune in to a common non-identity. Like we've spoken before about identitylessness, not identityless, where you're like a chicken without a head, but identitylessness means we've all got the same identity. We all belong together. And when we realize that, it's such a relief. I mean, like if you think about how my groups come together, how each group of people comes together, it's phenomenal, because how do we find each other? How do we get there into the mandala? And once we do, is it possible to take your mind and actually tune in on a higher level? I think we talk about it, but I think very few of us actually do it, because it's really, really hard to actually get there inside you. Why? Because we're attached to this temporary identity. So it's really, really difficult. So in his last book, Chogyam gave this a little bit of talk about the spiritual warrior long ago, but I'm going to just bring a few of his points in of what he says. He says, the spiritual warrior has the tradition of fearlessness. Now, fearlessness is different to fearless, because fearless is when you can do stupid things. Fearless, because if you're fearless, you might jump in where angels fear to tread, okay? And that would be fearless. But fearlessness means that you can see the possibility, even when you're in a fearful situation. I mean, say we were in a situation where we were getting killed, or we were having a plane accident or whatever. How would we be? Would we be ready? Would we be able to leave this whole identity and everything behind and go to where this identitylessness is, or this fearlessness? That's what he says. And he says, but they also believe in the fundamental notion of the basic goodness in themselves. A lot of people, and I mean this with all my heart, a lot of people do not believe in their basic goodness. And I think this is one of the real tragedies of our living in samsara, that we do not believe in our basic goodness. And a lot of people around us don't believe in our basic goodness, and we don't believe in theirs. And that's when you hate yourself so much. And he says, that means developing tenderness to yourself and your situation. And then it allows the warrior, the spiritual warrior, to see both our problems and our potential accurately. Now think about that sentence, because we dwell on the problems of this temporary identity, and we need to solve them all the time. But if you think about it, the temporary identity, if you think about it, there is also the potential for being absolutely accurate about who you really are. Now, we forget about that all the time. And he says the spiritual warrior does not ignore the potential and fixate on problems. Now, look at your day today. How many problems did you fixate on today? How much upliftedness did you have? How much did you bring to other people? Because he says we start to appreciate, when we are a spiritual warrior in Shambhala, we start to appreciate being in the right time, at the right place, and knowing there's a whole huge part of us that can see the truth, he says, and not fixate on how we've messed up. Now, you know, when I look at people, including myself, we fixate all the time on how much we messed up. We reprimand ourselves all the time about how we missed that and we missed this and how we messed up and how we didn't get the deal and how we didn't this and how we didn't that. And this is the whole of the Shambhala enlightened kingdom, that everybody is one and that you fixate on your potential just as much as you have to look obviously at your problem. He says you have to know there is a solution to every situation. And it's interesting that because he says the solution was there before the problem. Now, this is something that Taisitu Rinpoche talks about all the time, that the solution, the problem can only occur because there is a solution. So the solution was there before the problem came, but we don't trust it. You know, we don't trust it. So we really believe we have to negotiate, and we do have to negotiate a little bit. He says here, you have to identify your problem, but at the same time, you have to identify your potential for doing it. He says, we stop condemning ourselves for messing up, and we focus on the basic goodness which takes us out of the situation. And often we only get this in retrospect. But the warrior trusts in the outcome or solution, even though he can't see it at that time. It's a very important point, you know. He says, because this basic primordial dot is not dependent on anything. It's unconditional and fundamental. It's always there. And so the natural law order of this world, especially in the Shambhala enlightened kingdom, is not for or against. Hope and fear can't alter things. You can't keep hoping and then fearing. That is not the spiritual warrior. And I'll just give you a few more points that he says of the spiritual warrior. He says what's very important is that the warrior is sensitive to every aspect of phenomena, sight, smell, sound, feelings, and he or she is okay to feel alone. Now, I want to talk about this alone because it comes into all his stuff at the book, because alone and sad. How many people in this world often, they're not necessarily sad, but how many people are really frightened of being alone? And it's a very interesting thing, because if you take the word alone and you dissect it, it's all one. Alone means all one. Now think about that, because we're going to talk about it a bit. I'm going to open it up for you, because he says, even though the warrior, the spiritual warrior, is always there for beings, he finds himself more alone. Now, I found that very interesting, because often I'm sitting in social occasions and everything, and I feel that my opinion is so different to what the people are expressing. But I know that at that time, this is not the time to even give my opinion, which would be a bit controversial to the situation. So it's really important. You can have a real alone feeling. And when you are alone, you are all one. And that's what you've got to concentrate on, because I think it's really helpful. He says, when the warrior looks at renunciation, it's not so much about renunciating the material world, this and that and the other in the material. That's not what renunciation. You could do that if you really need it, if you think it's a distraction to you. But what you are really looking at, which is important, is you renounce anything that is a barrier in your experience between yourself and others. That's what you're renouncing. Now, that barrier comes all the time with people, because you see someone, he says renunciation here is making yourself more available, more gentle, more open to others. For the sake of others, you renounce your privacy. it's a greater vision than your personal territory or your schemes. Now, this is so important because if you think about it, when you look at somebody else, okay, the first thing that plops into your mind is what you think about that person. Are they pretty? Are they intelligent? Are they dumb? Do they give a nice vibe? Do they give a bad vibe? Everything, which is based on our karma, on our past, on everything that we've become in this temporary identity. Now, what you do when you're going into an enlightened mind is you stop giving your judgments. You actually look at the person and put the question mark, how did they come to be here? And if their opinion is completely different to yours, you are able to say to yourself, anything that is a barrier between me and them, and I'm going to come to the enlightened activities we use when there is a barrier between you and people. But whatever the barrier is, when you renunciate a barrier. That means you look into the other person and you see what is in the other person that you are not judgmental about and that you can relate to. Doesn't mean you like what they are, but it means you accept that everybody in this world is different, and that's okay. It's okay to be different. And you looking at the person's difference with a bit of a smile. It's okay, because you're really trying to understand it. It's a greater vision than your personal territory. Now, when he says you renounce your privacy, it's true. I know lots of people, friends of mine who are therapists and everything. I mean, you can't as a client phone them on a Sunday. You can't phone them at night. You can phone them in working hours. You know, when you become a spiritual warrior, those hours are gone. Then anything that's a barrier between you and people, you are pushing that aside so that you are there for other people. It's really important to understand this, because it's no longer about your personal journey. It's about how you can relate to other people and how you can actually, get to other people. Now, James Lowe, I think it was him who said, enlightenment is about connectivity, not autonomy. Now, this is very difficult because connectivity means you connect with people no matter their status, no matter if they're different to you. You're listening to them. It's not being autonomous, but it is being alone. There's a big difference between autonomy and alone, because aloneness, because autonomy means I do my own thing and I'm responsible for myself, you're responsible for yourself. That's not enlightenment. Enlightenment is connectivity. When you touch somebody wherever you are, doesn't matter if it's the beggar in the road, it doesn't matter how you do it, but there is a connectivity between you. And he said, spiritual warriors never give up, okay? They've got discipline, but their discipline is not rigid, but skillfully intelligent. They're always inquisitively interested in the world around them, but never anything promoting ego. So discipline is the meditative awareness of absolutely everything, no arrogance, and always sacred. Those were some of the points that he gave, and I think they really are very, very beautiful points. And he says, we need to lead our lives appreciating both the mundane and the extraordinary qualities. Both of them we hold equally without preference. Now, it's really difficult when you're on a real spiritual path, because you'd like to do everything spiritually. But what I've realized is you can't. because then you can't be enlightened if you are on your own journey and it's separate from everyone else. So I just want to read you a story, then I'll throw it open. You can give your comments. So Harry, an emergency physician, tells this story. One evening on his shift in a busy emergency room, a woman was brought in about to give birth. The nurses rapidly wheeled her into a room and paged him immediately. Then they rushed past him to call her obstetrician. Harry realized it was too late, and he was really pleased as he liked delivering babies. The baby was born almost immediately. While the little girl was still attached to her mother, Harry laid her alongside his left forearm. He took a suction bowl and began to clear her mouth and nose of mucus. Suddenly, the baby opened her eyes and looked directly at him. In that moment, Harry stepped past his technical role and realized a very simple thing, that he was the first human being, he says, this baby girl had ever seen. I'd rather say this baby girl had seen in this life, okay, because she's seen humans before, trust me. And he felt his heart go out to her in welcome from all the people everywhere, and tears came to his eyes. Now, Harry has delivered hundreds of babies, but he's never experienced the true meaning of what he was doing before that moment. He had always been preoccupied with the technical aspects and needs and dangers of the birth. This time, he was the physician and the human being together. He wonders how many other such moments of connection he has missed. He suspects there may have been many. Now, what I'm asking you all, have you missed connecting with people? How many people did you connect with today? Connect, really touch their hearts. Anyone? Think about it, because that's what it's about. It's not about anything else. You know, the self and the ego, James Lowe says, is the corset of the mind. You remember those girls who used to have these corsets in the old days? They tied them up like that. That's what our ego is to our mind. It ties it up tight. And we have to open everything that we have to do. And Trungpa says, when you are thoroughly soaked in unconditional goodness and an open mind, that's the trouble with this world. People do not have open minds. You become extremely insightful when you have an open mind, knowing what to reject and what to accept, and also understanding the basic notion of discipline. And in Shambhala, renunciation is very personal. It's not about giving up material things. It's about warding off your small-mindedness, that provincial mentality, a localized approach, a provincial thing, or only our things. You know, it's really, we have to experience the vastness of our true nature. Our true nature's not provincial. It's open to everything that there is in the world. What do you feel about all I'm saying? Anyone? Because it's really, really it's really interesting, all this stuff from the Shambhala, because can we give up our small-mindedness? There are so many narrow-minded people who think in the box and who can't get beyond that. And that's exactly what we're trying to do and what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to open to the vastness of our true nature. And then sometimes you open to the vastness of your true nature. And then the next thing you think, I'm going for shelter. I need time off. I know what I'm used to in a secure dwelling, 3 meals a day, my family around me. He says that's the setting sun mentality, not the mentality of the great rising sun. We can't handle the vastness, the open-mindedness to everything. So we go back to what we know with all our habitual tendencies. And he says renunciation is about giving up small-mindedness. That means daring to move into a vast space. And often that makes you find it hard to go back to what people around you really want you to be and what they're used to you. It's like a tribal mentality that we all have. You know, loyalty to the tribe. What do you think?
Well, I find that people with this narrow mind, or you know, I mean, I love the British people and I love the culture, I love being here, but a lot of them can just complain all the time, and anything they can find to complain about, they complain. And you know, yeah, I've got somebody on the team at work and I'm just feeling quite fed up with her. She just, you know, she's angry about every single thing. And she's very quick to be like, oh, you just such an idiot, you know, you just don't complain, you know, you just smile, you know, you just um, you know, kind of like puts me down. And I've just started ignoring. I've literally just put up a wall because I'm like, well, I'm not going to change. Because I find connecting with people, or you know, just being calm about things. But people love to be locked into anger, frustration,
But
and they love,
how can you, instead, I mean, you can ignore her, but how could you get through to her? How
well,
could you
Mel,
get
this has
connected?
been 4 years. So it's been 4 years with her. And I used to joke with her. I thought, okay, I'm going to let you be. And I was joking with her. And, you know, I mean, I was always putting up with her prods about me. And, oh, why don't you just have one of your tinctures, you know, your tinctures with your alcohol in it, and go sit on your cushion and, you know, just kind of like do her subtle insults of me, which I don't care. People can insult me. I really don't care. But it's just now, you know, now she's very negative because of the changes in the government in England. And so I've tried all of that. And now I'm like, really? Like, now there's just no point, really.
Well, I think you have to try some humor with her. You have to get through to her
I
because
have all the time. That's how I've dealt with her.
but it's interesting that you irritate her. It's
Yes,
interesting that you irritate her because you've got a very chirpy personality. You've
I
got a
do.
oh,
Yeah.
and it really irritates her because she prefers it if people nudge her and say how terrible everything is. So how could you, you know, can you just ignore what she says and still be nice to her, or do you just switch off from her? Because you don't want
Well,
to. If you've got somebody for 4 years that you're working with, it means there is something in your mirror that
yeah.
you are needing to learn. So ignoring her is not a good thing. But somehow, you know, maybe in a way, you got to get to know her a little bit. You know,
Yeah.
maybe you've got to get to know her a bit.
Okay.
You know, because I'm saying that there's a lesson in it. Now, if you
Of
take in
course.
saying about the Shambhala wisdom, okay, how do you do it? I mean, how would an enlightened person deal with her? How would they deal with her? Interesting, because
Uh, I
no,
suppose they would sit and look at their own minds and see what is this, where is this in my mind? So they would look at the angry mind, or look at the frustrated mind, and see what's there. And they would just do Tonglen for, you know,
you could do Tonglen for her. That might help a bit. But you know what? I remember I had this aunt who was in an old aged home alone in Johannesburg, and I used to go and visit her. And when you got there, she was the most negative person. In fact, people didn't like to visit her because she really, 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 but I mean, I didn't have to see her every day like you have to see this girl. But I used to make up my mind every time. I used to make up my mind when I went there. So I used to take her chocolates and this and that. And then she used to go muttering about how terrible the place was and all these kind of things.
Yeah.
I just used to ignore her muttering, and I used to stroke her and kiss her and just ignore it. And then slowly her mood uplifted a little bit, and then she'd leave negativity behind. I'd go, oh, well, like, oh, well, is really get you all muted. Otherwise, we're going to have all your sounds. So it's very interesting what you're saying, because, there's something you needing to learn. And maybe your chirpy personality, maybe one day, because you've had it for a long time, maybe one day you could actually go to and say, just what is it about me that irritates you, darling? Let me try and not do the things that irritate you, because after all, we've been together for a long time, and I think we could really like each other, something that disarms her completely. Because when you say to a person, what is it that you don't like about me? And then you take something like a little mirror and you say, you should see what I represent for you. That'll help you a lot. No, I would. I really would. I would break her down somehow and make the connection. And in the end, if she was really bitter, I'd give her a kiss on the cheek and say, well, never mind.
So Mel, this woman doesn't like hugs or anything, and she's just a very angry person, and
but
we found a way to deal with it, but lately I've reached a bit annoyance. Yeah.
I'm saying to you that for you, you've created this person with your
Yes.
personality. You've
Yes.
created this person, and you need to find a way to break through to her. However it is, you need to say, I'd really like you to, I would say, I'd really like to tell you to tell me what it is about me that irritates you, because I'd really like to stop doing it, because we're together every day. Something that disarms her.
Okay.
Anyway, I think it's really important that, because she's there for you to learn something.
Yeah.
This story tells us how to be really daring, and it took place one night at 11:30 p.m. An older African-American woman was standing on the side of an Alabama highway trying to endure a lashing rainstorm. Her car had broken down and she desperately needed a ride. Soaking wet, she decided to flag down the next car. Now, this is the point. A young white man stopped to help her, generally unheard of in those conflict-filled 1960s, because you didn't stop, because there was all these racial wars going on at the time. And so it was really dangerous if you stopped for anyone on the highway, but he did. The man took her to safety, helped her get assistance, and put her into a taxi cab. She seemed to be in a big hurry, but wrote down his address and thanked him. 7 days went by and a knock came on the man's door. He didn't think about it. To his surprise, a giant console color TV was delivered to his home. A note was attached. It read, "Thank you so much for assisting me on the highway the other night. The rain drenched not only my clothes, but also my spirits. Then you came along. Because of you, I was able to make it to my dying husband's bedside just before he passed away. God bless you for helping me and unselfishly serving others. Sincerely, Mrs. Nat King Cole." So she was the wife of Nat King Cole, you know, that everyone knew in America. And he stopped and he gave her a ride. And that's called daringness. Okay, because in those times that was absolutely something you weren't going to be doing. So I think with our absolute primordial consciousness, with our dot, with our everything, I think we can really, really, really know when it's okay to do things and when it isn't. But the most important thing you have to ask yourself in the Shambhala kingdom is, how is my spirituality going to affect other people around me? And what Tilopa did when he sang a song, Zongsa speaks about him, and in the song, he sang on sesame seeds. He said that we are like people who have ice in their hands, but are searching for water. And all we have to do is relax and the ice will melt. We go from a frozen state we have placed ourselves in to thawing out and letting that nature be released. The very mind is the wisdom. Frantic movement makes that ice more solid because it's frozen. And most of us are frozen. Some of you are physically frozen as well, it looks like, when I look at all of you. But I want you to really understand this, because this is Chogyam's Shambhala wisdom. How do you actually fit this in your daily life? How daring can you be? How open-minded can you be? How closed-minded are you? How much of your family background really, keeps on going for you all the time? So last week we were talking about blamelessness, stopping blaming circumstances and realizing that we have to listen and we have to help ourselves to hear and other people to hear what it is that we're supposed to be doing. It's really, really important, and I think that in many ways we need to pacify people when they are in these ugly states. And I think if we look at the four Buddhist, there are actually five, but if you look at the four Buddhist enlightened activities, it's so important to use these in your everyday life, okay? So what are the four activities? The last one is action accomplishment, but we won't use that now because we're not seeing ourselves as being able to give action accomplishment. We're just going to see the four enlightened activities, and I'd like you to be able to use them. The one is pacification. Now, Kathy, this is a very important enlightened activity, because pacification, when you give the baby the dummy, is when I had a client, and this client was having the most terrible trouble with his mother. So we decided that I would phone the mother while we were in the session, and I would speak to her, and he could actually hear what his mother says. So she was ranting and raving. Now, I knew at that point in time, this is not a good idea to try and push the point that why I phoned her. It's much better to try and pacify her first. And how do you use pacification? I'm not agreeing with her, but I am saying I can understand exactly how you feel. I'm sure this must be very difficult for you. I'm sure this is something most unusual to you. I can understand your tears, your this, your that. Like, that's how you pacify people, not by agreeing with them, but by understanding, by making that connection, because you understand where they are coming from. Now talk to me. I want to give you all four. But if you don't talk, I feel like I'm giving a monologue here, you know, except for Kathy. What do you feel about pacification? It's really hard when someone's screaming at you or someone's really giving you a hard time. It's very hard to use the enlightened activity of pacification. But how you pacify is that you see where they are coming from and you understand that. That's how you do the Buddhist activity of pacification. So when you see people doing pacification and it's done, you know, it's not a good idea that they're pacifying, you know, that person by agreeing with them. That's not pacification. Pacification is when you can understand exactly how they feel, which is really important, you know. So pacification is the first one. The second one is called increasing enlightened activity. Now, increasing enlightened activity is a very important one, because what you're doing, and Kathy, let's keep using your example because it's nice, these enlightened activity, because increasing means you increase what is good. You make more what is good. So if you can see that somebody has got a certain thing, you do the increasing activity, which means that you really increase what the goodness is there. You build it up, you increase it all. So if I see someone's really struggling spiritually, and I use the enlightened activity of increasing, I will help build on what they can understand and build it and increase it in every conceivable way. So that's the second activity. You can ask me afterwards. I'll be happy if you make comment. The third one is magnetizing. That's your favorite, Tatiana. Okay. Magnetizing. What magnetizing is that when you've got something really amazing to offer, and you know you've got that, you magnetize people into it. You teach them, you magnetize them, you make it attractive for them. You really magnetize people. It's like someone who's got drug addict, and they absolutely and totally can't get beyond their drugging. So that person who's really helping magnetizes all of them and gives them a different way, a different route, a different how. That's how you magnetize people into the beauty of your spiritual whatever it is. And the last one is subjugating. Okay, now subjugating is, for me, at the end, when you could do nothing about it, like when Guru Rinpoche and all of those very high beings subjugated Rudra. So they pulled him down, they absolutely defeated him. Like when Guru Rinpoche was coming around the mountain, there was this being who didn't want him to come to Tibet. So she started by pushing snow down on the mountain and on top of him. But of course, he was an enlightened being, so it didn't even worry him. So what he did was, eventually, all the snow had melted at the bottom, and he actually got her into the water and boiled the water. Okay. And, you know, that's who was Ekajati supposed to be. She only had one eye left because he shot this and he did this and he did that. You know, it's all in the whole legends of the story. But subjugating is when you finally have to really end this behavior. Okay, when they're really causing terrible damage and terrible karma, you might have to end them. There are a couple of people in America, Phyllis, that might eventually have to be subjugated and erupted. Okay.
Maybe that's what Kathy needs to do as well.
She hasn't tried the other enlightenment. Because you know what? that subjugating is very interesting. So when I am doing my prayers, especially to Guru Rinpoche in the morning, and I always go through all the leaders that are really committing evil in the world, evil, which I told you is ignorance, not evil. So I really ask, I go through each of these leaders, and first I ask that they be awakened into their truth. That's what I first ask for. Okay, they must be awakened as to what they're doing, because that would be the optimal thing. But then, after they've awakened, I say, if they won't awaken, subjugation. Okay, subjugation. End it forthwith, and that's it. But your lady, we're not subjugating yet, Kat. We don't have the power to do it anyway. Okay. So those are the 4 activities which I'm translating into you. These are the activities that all the enlightened leaders actually use. Any questions, any comments, any
I have a comment.
please.
I think I spent those 2 weeks at the Congo Lane, and my experience was all the practices and everything that we do all day is make offerings, which it is generosity. I think a way in, especially for us that we don't have so much wisdom. Obviously, to do all these 4 things, you need wisdom. Otherwise, you just create more, chaos, really, with all the pride and everything. So being generous with your smile, with your presence, when you listen, is different. It feels different. When I see someone, sometimes I wish the enlightenment, and it feels completely different.
You're right. You're 100%
A stranger,
right.
you say, you smile, and it's a completely different day.
No, it absolutely is. Tao, look, we're happy to have you with all your comments when you come in, even if you're late. But you know what, Tati, the thing is that, do you understand that these enlightened activities are all to benefit beings? And the only time subjugation would be used is if that being is creating the most horrific karma for them. Like, when that pirate came on the ship that the Buddha was on, and the Buddha could see he was going to actually go and kill people on the ship and then take all their jewelry and all their possessions. And so the Buddha killed him first. Now you might say, he killed him. Oh my God. I mean, a Buddha killed somebody. No, his intention was to kill the guy before he could do this, because this would land him in the hell realms. And I find myself saying to lots of these people, like I talk to Putin and I talk to Trump, and I tell them about the hell realms and what's going to happen when they're left with their minds in the end. So, you try and talk, and you try and ask, and you try, but subjugation's the last enlightened activity. We're going to use the increasing, the pacifying, the increasing, the magnetizing, and lastly, the subjugation. We can't really do subjugation because we're not enlightened, but Kathy's making a sign. She wanted to subjugate. No, you can't. You're going to look at what you've got to learn from her and use your Shambhala wisdom to do it, because it's really important.
I think you can offer a cup of tea, you can bring a chocolate, as you said about your auntie. These little things, shows that you care, that someone is looking after you. It doesn't have to be a big gesture.
Very, very important. So you put a chocolate on her desk in the morning and you say, for your sweetness today. That'll floor her out, okay? For your sweetness today. It'll be very good if you do that.
She's a very, very cranky person. Okay, so if you put something on her desk, then she'll say something like, "Oh, I don't really like that. Or she's like, you know, you don't have to do that for me. She is a very, very
Oh, Cass,
difficult. She's a difficult one.
you don't have to do that for me, you say, but I want to.
I've done all of that. I've done all of that. I take things, I put things in the office, I keep it lighter. But I think I just irritate her because you know, I'm a hardworking person and she doesn't like that.
Look at it, but don't look at it like that.
Okay.
Look at it in the other way of what is it that I'm supposed to be learning here? You know,
Yeah.
what if I created her? There's a lot that I've got to learn from her, you know. It's really important. Honestly, it is. So anyway, we're going to do a little meditation in 1 minute. But when he talks about last week, the blamelessness, that you stop blaming your family, stop blaming your background, stop blaming your circumstances, you're in the right place. And it doesn't matter. He says, when we want to blame, he says we have to cheer up the world, Kathy, without blame. Okay. But he says, when we want to blame, just come back to your oneness, Okay, now that's very interesting because how do you do that? Oneness, alone, all one. And, you know, I was thinking of the word, when I was looking at these words, I was thinking of the word atonement. When you atone for your sins and things, that's also at-one-ment. It's very interesting when you look at words and you see, you know, what they are. He says we need to uplift human conditions. That's what Shambhala is about, uplifting human condition. We need to take people out of the lower realms. How? How do we get people out of the lower realms? You know, just think, people are in a realm. Their minds, people are in a realm and their minds are all together. How do we get them out? How do we help them to really get out?
The thing is, Mel, if people don't want to get out of that space,
Yes.
I mean, you can bring peace and love, and you can joke and you can be sincere, and you can you know, understand where they're coming from and offer that empathy. But if somebody is just angry, then all they're gonna see is that anger, unless, I don't know. I like subjugation, I'm joking.
But
I'm Googling how to subjugate someone. No,
May I comment?
I'm joking.
May I comment?
Yeah, you may.
So I'm not sure if in this Buddhism there is the philosophy of the 10 worlds. Is there?
10 worlds.
10 worlds. In other words, we spoke about like the 10 worlds, you know, like of anger, and then all of these different ones, and then enlightenment is the
6 worlds, from the hell realm to the hungry ghost.
okay, yeah.
Etc. Right?
So I'm familiar with the philosophy of another Buddhism where there are 10, but anyway, it doesn't matter. The point I want to make is still the same. And when we hope to reach people, sometimes the jump from their hell realm to enlightenment, or to even anything that is satisfactory for them, in our terms, is just too big. It's too much of a big jump, and something, you know, maybe from just a much lower expectation, but that nudges them along the road of contentment or happiness or enlightenment a little bit is better than expecting a massive climatic change of, you know, massive proportions, because it's too much. People can't do that from the place that they're in. They're in a very broken place.
100% right what you're saying, because remember, in some of these realms, people have been in these realms for absolutely many, many, many incarnations. They don't just come out, but remember something really important.
Yeah.
When in Buddhist books, never mind Shambhala books, they talk about the hell realms. Okay, so the hell, so they say like this, they say, in the hell realms, the mind, this is not a physical realm, it's a mental realm. In the hell realms, it repeats itself over and over again. So say the person is in the middle of a water, and now the two mountains come and crush them, okay? And they're screaming, ah, ah. And then the mountains eventually go back to their place, the water stops boiling, and they are there. And then next minute, the whole process starts again. So when they describe, when these masters really describe the realms, they talk about the repetitive nature of the realm. Now think about what I'm saying. If one person in that realm, if they're in that mental realm, if one person in that realm puts their hand up, even has a tiny thought like, there's got to be more than this, they're out of the realm, which is interesting in terms of your thing, because many years ago, I don't know why this happened to me. I used to have these dreams on and on and on. I used to go into these unbelievably dark realms. When I got there, people used to throw tomatoes at me and all kinds of things. It was really a terrible time. But I used to teach them spiritually in these realms all the time. And then you think, what would you do that for? Because I used to wake up fairly traumatized afterwards, but I kept going back and back and back. Then one day it stopped and I never went back. But if you can get a person just to put their finger up and say, there's got to be more, they're out of the realm. It breaks the pattern of the repetition of the realm. So that if you are somewhere and there's a person that continuously does something, like even in the hungry ghost realm, I was telling them yesterday that Lama Lena took her, sorry, I'm repeating the story, but it's very interesting. She took a friend of hers, a male friend of hers, who was always in poverty. He was always in poverty. He couldn't get a job. He couldn't keep money. He just lived in a poverty mentality. So one day she took her small cash box. She poured it into his hand like that. And then she said to him, now take all these coins and go and give them to every single beggar that you can see anywhere. And he went for a long time and he came back with all the coins in his hand. He couldn't give to the beggars. He couldn't give, even though they weren't even his coins. So they had to find another way that didn't work for him. But the poverty that he was experiencing was as a result of the mental activity. He was not able to give anything. He wasn't able to give of himself. Neither can this woman, Kathy. You know, she can't give of herself, maybe in a work situation occasionally. But when you look at it, it's that poverty mentality. And sometimes you could just help them to do the opposite, to put the hand up just to notice something, and that takes them out of the realm for life. So don't give up and use these enlightened activities, because it's really, really important that we need to take people out of the lower realms. And sometimes one comment from you can take them out. One comment. It's just something that you allow to happen through you that just goes penetrating in, and they can't stop thinking about it. And that can actually get a person out of the lower realms. So it's really important not to give up. ever to give up, because there really is a way to do it, okay? And he says, when you have to do something, just come back to your oneness. So when you're sitting with someone and you can't get anywhere, like, you know, yesterday I was listening to this woman ranting and raving and ranting and raving. And inside me, I was thinking, you know, how can I calm her? But as soon as I used the pacification, as soon as I said, you know, I can feel your anguish, she stopped. Just that one comment. And all of you can do that with people, just one comment. Sometimes if they're a tough nut to crack, it won't help. But I think that a lot of us can do that very, very easily. And
I think there's a discerning point, though, in that we aren't the agent. We feel as though we are the agent, but if we stay with the oneness, which is what you're talking about, I'm really just saying what you've just said in a slightly different way to clarify something and to see whether you agree, really. But I think that there's a distinction in that we have to learn that we aren't the agent, and if we can manage to negotiate with our egos to go back to oneness and be in oneness, when we make the intervention, then the intervention is so much sharper. I'm putting it in a very psychiatric nursing way, I know, but that's what I think.
No, but I think what I want you all to understand is that the Shambhala kingdom was enlightened. That if you say, but then was it a real kingdom? Well, it was a real mental kingdom where people came together because they had that ability. And when you see somebody who's in an onward struggle, there's got to be something, the Guru Rinpoche inside you, that can find one comment to get through. And I think that's what you're saying, that, you know, the person sometimes just needs a jolt, and then they can actually see what they've got to see. Because, you know, Trungpa says the topic in Shambhala is decency, which is modesty and no arrogance, and being kind and wise, never being tired or made haggard by others, never being tired or made haggard by others, being loyal to others and the Shambhala vision, and free from trickery, which is truthful. I just want to say one thing, and then let's do a meditation. That if you look at it, very, very interesting, because in the Shambhala kingdom, they only say good morning. The great eastern sun is rising, and they never say good night. They say good morning even at night, okay? Because it's always the power and strength of the rising sun, which is, so it's always morning. Now, Zongsa, it's very interesting. Zongsa, when he was talking in India, he talked about common sense. Now, I want you to think about this word, common sense, okay? How many times do a lot of us say to our children when they say, what should I do? And you say, listen, use your common sense, okay? So he talks about common sense, and he says, we think it's wonderful to have common sense, but actually it's the sense of Sem, the human mind. Common sense is the sense of the human mind. It's the logic by which we live by. And how strange that we're taught common sense, and it keeps us in the human mind. Common sense is the human mind, not the enlightened mind, not the awakened mind. So why do we have it? And he says, you must ponder that. He said, because the word for ordinary sentient beings in Tibetan, as opposed to Buddhas, is Semchen. You'll read it, Semchen, Tamche. Semchen is ordinary beings, okay? And it means Chen, Sem is your ordinary mind, and Chen means which has. He said, so common sense means which has sim. So common sense is when you use your human mind. Is that a good thing? We're trying to get out of using the human mind. So when people say to you, it's common sense, you might say to them, well, common sense is for the human logic. It's not for my vast awakened mind. I wonder what they'd think. Because I think our parents all said, have some common sense. Use your common sense. Shouldn't they have said, use your awakened mind, which knows why you're in a situation and what you do there. So let's meditate, everybody. You can't hear the gong. I'm so sad I can't gong you because apparently you can't hear it, I'm told, unless I do something on this computer. And when one of you really work it out, let me know, because I'm gonging, but you can't hear that. Is that right? It's incredible. All the outside noise is off, so somebody's got to teach me how to do it. So I want you to just come to this moment, sit in your meditative posture, and just breathe in the spaciousness, the vastness of your awakened mind. I want you to really, really feel that awakened mind. It's vast. Your thoughts, your feelings, your intellect, your situations are just the things that are being expressed from your beautiful, vast mind. Don't go after them. Stop chasing them. Don't let your attention go right after every thought you've got, every feeling you've got. Just let it go into the vastness of your mind. And think about that word, aloneness, or oneness. Means you're in touch with everyone around you and with all sentient beings. The birds, the bees. The Buddha could talk to the birds, he could talk to the animals, he could talk to any sentient being because he was at oneness, absolutely in tune. So tonight, I would like you, before we finish the Shambhala wisdom, I would like you to feel that wholesomeness that exists in you, even though when you're tired and everything, you can't think of it, but feel it. It's full of possibility. And I want you to just look at the three people that, even one is fine if you can't think of three, but three people that have really been very difficult in your life. You can go back in years, doesn't matter, but three people that have really given you uphill. It could be a teacher, it could be a parent, it could be someone that you know irritates you. And I want you now, it could be a co-worker, it could be a boss, it could be anyone. I want you to look at them, but look at them past your common sense of your human mind. Try and put the question mark. Try and see what the barrier was between you. Try and see what it was in you that caused you to be distant from that person. Even if you were small, I want you to focus on them. See if you can change, because enlightenment's about connectivity. Each of them were there for a real reason. There was a creation in you that needed that. And that's why they were there. You created them. And bravo that you did, because they were your biggest teachers. See if there's something you can do to make your connection with them now, right now. You to understand what the world is, what an enlightened community is. It's where people understand, where people relate, where you feel safe, where there's no need for aggression or wars. What a beautiful way to live. And when you change yourself to being like that, you are already living in a Shambhala society, which is enlightened, beautiful, open, caring, blameless, decency. Think of the word decency. Put your mantle right around any of the people that you really, really find difficult in your life, now or then. It's so important in our lives that we are able to see what it is that we need to be doing. We want that fundamental wholesomeness to arise in ourselves, full of possibility. Another way, another method. Pacification, increasing, magnetizing, subjugating. The four enlightened activities. You are all enlightened beings. You just have to recognize it, re-know it, and then you know how to handle it. Slowly come back. And never forget, I can't gum you back, never forget the vastness of your mind, that you have enough space to do everything. And I just want to give you his 7 virtues of the higher realms, which Trungpa says in the Shambhala. He says, faith, which is genuineness, belief, in yourself as well. Discipline, which is very important, but not rigid discipline. Just discipline so you can do what you have to. Daring, learning and studying is number 4. Decorum, which comes with discipline and self-respect. Modesty, being modest about yourself is really important. Discriminating awareness. That's when you're able to distinguish what's right and what's wrong. He says, by practicing these 7 virtues, you develop the capability to, and listen to this sentence, bring about the first thought, which is your fresh thought. Now, you know what I want to tell you about that, because it's such an important thing of the Shambhala wisdom. Your first thought when you're in a place is usually the one that comes instinctively. But you know how many times you think something, the first thought, the fresh thought when you come in, and then you change your mind as Sem takes over and your intellect takes over, and you lose the freshness. To be in the Shambhala kingdom, you've got to have real freshness, a fresh approach. Every day's got to be a fresh approach. Everything you do, you touch people's got to be fresh, okay? He says, they didn't have wars, they didn't have aggressions, they did not separate the mind and body, so they did everything in a proper way. They ate properly, they slept properly, oh, glory, hallelujah. They dressed properly, they sit properly. He said, and then everything becomes a sacred activity. He was always telling his audiences, put your shoulders back, you know, put your head up and, you know, walk forward into life with that elegance, with that uprightness, with that upliftedness to walk in. When you come into a room, you're going to uplift all the people that are in that room. Remember this when you're down and getting moaned at by the people in your work or something. It's really important, that upliftedness. And I want to read you his little poem at the end, but does anybody want to say anything or comment? I just hope from these Shambhala teachings, you can get something that you carry out into your life, you know, into your daily life, which is really important. Anyone want anything? And I'm going to read you his poem. It's it's called Auspicious Coincidence. Do you know what auspicious coincidence means? That you're in a place and something happens, and it's very auspicious coincidence because you were in the right place at the right time, and so it happened. So this is his poem. You know, it was a little bit crazy. It's called Wealth and Vision, and this was his poem. The tiger has developed more stripes. The lion has developed more mane. Could the Garuda fly further? You know, the Garuda bird comes out of its nest and it can fly straight away. Is it possible that the dragon could resound deeper? 10 years of being here be more? Sometimes I feel I've been in North America for 10,000 years. Other times, maybe only 10 seconds. We grow old and we grow young and old simultaneously. And then he says, we certainly appreciate what we have done, what we have achieved in 10 kalpas. A kalpa is a long time, or 10 seconds. It's wondrous, shocking that you as the noble Sangha and I as the Vajra master, we grew old together. Such a wonderful dharmic world would be impossible if we never met each other. We could say that the wise and the wicked have no time to rest. Let us not indulge each other in the ground path and fruition of our journey. Let us wake and join in the celebration, and let us go further without rest in the name of the lineage and our forefathers. Let us hitch up our tubas fearlessly. The tuba was what they used, like the wagon that they used. Let us hitch up our tubas fearlessly. Let us bring about the dawn of Tantra along with the great eastern sun. And that's his poem on auspicious coincidence. I should have actually photographed it, you know. Posture is a key. Yeah. Shame, I know you did. What's your time now? She's ahead of us, or she's 2. What are you? Oh, 11. Yeah, it's late for you. She's in Mauritius, so she's 2 hours ahead. You're 2 hours behind. So in your day, you're 4 hours behind Jade, and yet you're in the same place. That's called auspicious coincidence. She's ready for bed, you're ready for your day. Phyllis is only going out into the sunshine. We all at different levels. Pleasure, Freya, I still want your camera. We all at different levels, yet we all together in this place at this time. How wonderful. Will you think about it? Let's dedicate the teachings, and then we'll leave the Shambhala wisdom for a bit. And next week, I'm going to go on to the 5 dimensions of consciousness, because I think it's really a very important thing. And let's dedicate for all sentient beings, for the wars to end, for the discussion between Trump and Putin to have been fruitful, not just in the favor of Putin, but in the favor of all the beings that are involved in this. And let's really pray for all those, for the hostages, for if there's any merit in the talk, may it go to them, to all the people who've been killed in wars, and all the people who are really, really suffering. May they know that they've got this little awakened, this vast awakened part of themselves, and that they're in the right place at the right time, and they need to use it. And through this merit, may all beings attain omniscience, may all obscurations fall away from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. On the ocean of samsara, may all beings be freed. Sonam die tamche zipane topne nepe dranam tamshene jega nachi balak topaye sipe sole doa dro warsho. Stop.